What's up my friends, welcome back to the channel, and on today's video I got a good one for you. Because on today's video we are reviewing a super shoe that brings the Adios Pro line up to the competition, at least in my opinion. Or I should say, it brings it up to the competition for me, for the type of shoe that I like to run in on race day. So this is my review of the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro 4. Let's get into it. Alright, let's get started with those disclosures. Guys, this pair of the Adidas Adios Pro 4 was sent to me for the purpose of review. However, no one at Adidas has told me what to say. They don't have any editorial privileges, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. With that said, you're going to be able to pick up a pair of the Adidas Adios Pro 4 for $250. And right off the bat, $250 is a very fair price for this shoe, especially when we look at some of the competition that are seeing their prices rise just a bit above that $250 mark. Okay, so let's get into it. And okay, before we actually get started, I do have to say that this pair of the Adidas Adios Pro 4 is a size 12.5. I wear a US men's size 13. Unfortunately for me, that means I have been running in a shoe that is just a tad too small for me. And when I say a tad too small, I mean it's not noticeable some of the time when I'm actually running, but when I put the shoe on my foot, everything just feels a little too tight. Now it is a race day shoe, so is it supposed to be tight? I would probably argue yes, but technically this is not my size. So some of the issues that I found with the Adios Pro 4 are probably going to go away when I wear it in my size. And it also means that some of the comparables that I'm going to compare it to, at least in weight, aren't going to be exactly spot on, but you'll get a good idea. So the Adizero Adios Pro 4 has 39 in the heel, 33 in the forefoot for a 6mm drop. Right, that's exactly the same from the Adios Pro 3. And that's a good thing. We have a max stack height, 6mm drop is just right in that sweet spot. So I'm glad they didn't change anything there. But spoiler, there are a lot of other changes. Now, Adidas claims that in a US men's size 9, the Adios Pro 4 will tip the scale at 7 ounces or 200 grams. That is light. But in my size, or at least my sample size, a US men's size 12.5, it tips the scale at 8.2 ounces or only 233 grams. Now, if we compare that to the Adios Pro 3, which is actually in my size, a US men's size 13, the Adios Pro 3 tips the scale at 9.8 ounces or 278 grams. So clearly, even though there is a half size difference, the Pro 3 is a half size bigger, there is a 45 gram difference. That is, the Pro 4 weighs 45 grams less than my Pro 3. So even if I had the US men's size 13, it would still be remarkably lighter. And this difference is noticeable when I'm holding these two shoes in my hand. But what about some other shoes that the Adios Pro 4 is going to be competing against? How about the Vaporfly 3? Now in my size, again, US men's size 13, the Nike Vaporfly 3 tips the scale at 8.3 ounces or 234 grams. So that's just 1 gram heavier than the Adios Pro 4. But remember, we have to go up half a size to have a fair comparison. So the Adios Pro 4 is just slightly heavier than the Vaporfly 3. Next up, we have the Metaspeed Edge Paris. Now in my size, a US men's size 13, the Metaspeed Edge Paris tips the scale at only 7.9 ounces or 224 grams. So still, the Metaspeed Edge Paris and Sky Paris are still quite a bit lighter than the Adios Pro 4. But still, the Adios Pro 4 is right in line with its lightweight competition, and we're going to talk about ride in just a second, but the ride has changed and is now a lot more in line with at least those other two super shoes. So let's start at the top and work our way down and hold this up. And guys, no one is going to be surprised here. We have a very minimal heel collar. We do have some bolster padding here on the side, and a difference between this and the Adios Pro 3 is that Adidas has included some padding right here on the back of the heel. Before, they just had those pads on the side, just gripping the sides. Now it goes all the way around, probably to give a more comfortable fit. The heel counter is just as we would expect in a race day shoe of this caliber. It's not there, and that is to save weight. Now, there are some downsides to not having a heel counter, and that is heel slip. When we have a heel counter, it tends to lock us into the shoe a little more. And overall, my experience with the heel counter on the Adios Pro 4 was exactly the same as other shoes that have a similar heel counter. I tend to get just a little bit of heel slip, but it's not enough to really put me off wearing the shoe. It's more like a feeling of looseness rather than actual movement in my heel. So I really can't complain. It works well, and I'm loving the weight of this. While we are at the back of the shoe, we do have this heel pull here, and hiding right underneath is a little Easter egg. It says, "This too shall pass." And that is probably the most important lesson that we can learn when we are running a marathon or a half marathon. But the Adios Pro 4 is a long distance race day shoe, so it's made for the marathon and of course the half marathon. But I've got some thoughts on that as far as how fast I actually run and what kind of runs it would be good for, but we'll get to that in just a second. For the upper, Adidas is using Guys, this upper is absolutely gorgeous. It's a lightweight, very smooth woven mesh upper, and unlike some of the other competition, this upper is so nice to the touch. Like, it's extremely soft. Now, it's soft and it's strong, and what Adidas has done is they've made it a one-way stretch material. So it's only going to stretch vertically rather than horizontally, and that is to keep your feet locked down within the upper. And while we're talking about the upper and things Adidas is doing to keep your foot locked down, they've also included this light lock band. This light lock band starts here at the heel and it runs down the side, comes around, and then it runs down the other side. And basically that is just giving a little more reinforcement to the upper. So when that upper locks down across your midfoot, you are going to have less lateral movement. At least that's the idea behind it. Now, as far as overlays, obviously we've got these giant 3 stripes, which I think just look fantastic. Definitely reminiscent of this shoe's big sister, the Evo Pro 1, and also reminiscent of this shoe's little brother, the Evo SL. So yeah, we've got these 3 stripes overlays. We've got some overlays coming along the eyelet chain just to give a little strength, a very light underlay coming around the toe box, and then of course that light lock band is essentially an underlay that comes around the shoe. Now, Adidas has made some big changes with the tongue on the Adios Pro 4, but if I'm honest, I think there is a little more room for improvement with the tongue, and well, I'll tell you why. First of all, this tongue is tacked to the inside. Actually, it's tacked in the same line as this light lock band, so on both sides the tongue is tacked there, and essentially it works the same as a gusseted tongue. It's got nowhere to move, so it won't move on you. We also have a big lace loop here in the middle, and what Adidas has done with the Adios Pro 4 is they've added a little padding to this lace loop area, so we're not going to get any lace bite right on the center of our foot right here. However, I found that this padded piece, we can see it says Adizero right here, but that padded piece stops, for me, just a little too early, because these top laces, when I cinch them down, they actually bite into the top of my foot. So if this padding just came up maybe, I don't know, 1 centimeter more, I think it would be enough for these top laces to have that padding and not bite into the top of my foot. Like, they'd be pressing on the padding and everything would just feel great. But unfortunately, at least in my experience, I did get a little bit of lace bite here at the top of my foot. It was never enough for me to stop my run and actually retie the laces or do anything about it, but it was something that I noticed. But I've got to say, overall, the tongue is a huge improvement over the Adios Pro 3, which wasn't gusseted, and you really had to be careful when you put your foot in because that tongue would just wrap up underneath your foot. Coming down to the midsole, Adidas is using Light Strike Pro, no surprises there, but it is a totally different formulation of the Light Strike Pro that we've seen in the Adios Pro 3. And in a very small nutshell, the Light Strike Pro in the Adios Pro 4 is much softer than in the Adios Pro 3. And that, at least in my opinion, for the type of shoes that I like to run in on race day, is a huge improvement. It is so comfortable and plush. And when you incorporate the Energy Rods 2.0, which we can get a glimpse of them right here on the bottom, the Energy Rods 2.0 with that super soft Light Strike Pro foam gives a treat of a ride. It's soft and responsive, and personally that's exactly what I'm looking for. Now, another thing that Adidas has changed with the Adios Pro 4 is that they've changed the rocker point to 60%. So we start at the back of the shoe, we come forward 60%, and that is where the rocker starts. Now, that's the same in the Evo Pro 1, but it's different from the Adios Pro 3, where the rocker started at 70%. And basically, that's going to make the shoe just feel a little more aggressive. Because that rocker starts just slightly further back, it's going to give that feeling of kind of falling forwards, and when you're falling forwards, it feels like you're moving forward a lot easier, with a lot less resistance. And that's exactly how I experienced it. However, let me just remind you that I am a heel striker, and unless I'm running at certain paces, I may or may not be able to take advantage of that 60% rocker. But hold on, we'll talk about the ride in just a sec. Coming down to the outsole, we have a full coverage of outsole rubber, but this time Adidas is using light traction. Basically, they're using light traction all the way up, all the way over the forefoot, except for this little red piece right here where your big toe is going to be pushing off, and that is Continental rubber. Now, Adidas did a lot of research before they put this outsole rubber pattern on their shoe. They tested a bunch of their runners to see where their foot actually hits the ground, and in those places they put the most outsole rubber. Like, they didn't just slap on some outsole rubber and thought, that's good enough. They did a lot of testing, and what you see on the Adios Pro 4 is exactly what their pro runners needed. And if it's good enough for a pro runner, probably good enough for me. Okay, so let's talk about ride. And before we talk about ride, I did receive this shoe when I was in Berlin for the Berlin Marathon, but because it was a size 12.5, which was not my size, and as I already said, the shoe just fits a little tight. I didn't want to risk any issues because I didn't have time to test the shoe before the race, and because it was just a little tight, I actually opted for the Adios Pro 3 for the Berlin Marathon rather than racing in the Adios Pro 4. And I gotta say, I still stand by that decision. Even though I do prefer the ride of the Adios Pro 4, I think the Adios Pro 3 was just a tad more comfortable for me because it was my actual size. Right? I guess that's understandable. Oh, and if you are wondering about how soft the midsole foam is, the Light Strike Pro foam is in the Adios Pro 4 compared with the Adios Pro 3, I have a durometer right here. Let me just turn it on. Okay, we have 21.5, 22, 22, 22. All right, that's pretty even. We had 21.5 when I tried it again in the front. It went up to 22, 22 in the heel. I have the Adios Pro 3 right here. Try this in the heel. 27.5, 28, 28, 28.5, 28. So there it is. Look, the difference is obvious when you're actually running in the shoe, but now it's backed up by an actual scientific instrument. We have a durometer reading of 22 in the Adios Pro 4 and around 28 in the Adios Pro 3. And as I already said, that's exactly what I like best about this shoe. I like that softer ride. I like the propulsive feeling. However, a softer foam isn't always like the best thing to have. And what I did find with the Adios Pro 4 is that because of the softer ride, it was a little less stable than the Adios Pro 3. And I say a little less stable, for me at least, it was a lot less stable. Now, in the Adios Pro 3, I actually didn't run into any stability issues. Right? And that's probably because of that firmer Light Strike Pro in the Adios Pro 3. But in the Adios Pro 4, I had a lot more room to move. So if I was taking a sharp turn around a corner, it would feel a little squirrely, but where I really noticed it was when I was running through divots in the road. So if I was running and I stepped in a pothole, I mean, obviously that's probably going to cause some instability issues for any shoe, but what I really found was just little divots, like almost where the tires of a car will wear down the road in their lane of travel. So just that little bit of an indent would feel very unstable in the Adios Pro 4. Also, it seems to me after running in both the Adios Pro 3 and the Adios Pro 4 that the Adios Pro 3 is a little more forgiving for a wider range of runners. And I think that comes down to a lot of things. I think definitely that's going to come down to the stability, so the softer Light Strike Pro in the Adios Pro 4, but also probably this rocker point at 60%. The Adios Pro 4 does not run as well as the Adios Pro 3 at slower speeds. Now, when I have been using this shoe and I've been running at marathon pace, it feels pretty good. Like marathon pace is fairly fast. It feels fast to me. Of course, fast is all relative, but when I'm running in the low to mid 7s, for me and how I run, the Adios Pro 4 works very well. However, when I'm running slower than that, yeah, probably not the best shoe. Now, on the other side of the coin, when I'm running intervals or I'm running at threshold pace, the Adios Pro 4 feels really good. So just based on my experience, I'm not sure how well the Adios Pro 4 is going to work for runners that take 4 hours, 5 hours in the marathon. Now, that's not to say you can't run in it. I think you would run in it and it would feel great, but are you going to get the most out of it? I don't know. Now look, I do want to say that I haven't scientifically tested the Adios Pro 4 against the Adios Pro 3. This is just my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt, as always, is everything I say. But one thing's for sure, the Adios Pro 4 is a superb update to the Adios Pro 3. On a lot of metrics, it is a far better race day shoe. And I think there's a lot of people that are going to love it and are going to run really fast in it. So, have you run in the Adios Pro 3? Are you thinking about picking up a pair of the Adios Pro 4? Drop a comment, let me know. And with that, it's Matt B. This has been my review of the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro 4. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.